Most worship services today are at least an hour long. What do you do with an hour so that someone will want to come back? If your worship has one tone, one emotion, one level, then it is boring and people will be lulled to sleep. Great worship is a little bit of a roller coaster with highs and lows and twists and turns where everyone has to pay attention to keep up with where you are going next. How do you do that? Well, stick around, and I'll share with you some things that worked for me today on Coffee with Coach. I'm Steve Petty, and I have 3 goals for these videos: to help you become a better church leader, to save you time and money, and to help educate, energize, and motivate you to energize and motivate your church. So, dear friends, when was the last time people laughed out loud during worship service? Do you allow moments for absolute silence? Are there very formal elements? Are there moments designed to have spontaneity? Does the service build gradually, emotionally, energetically to a high point within 5 to 10 minutes before the end of the worship service? Well, if not, it should. So here are 8 ideas that worked for me. First of all, call to worship. I believe that a call to worship has to be thematically correct. You have to be able to introduce your theme, but it also needs to be a little bit different. Very, very formal calls to worship had a place in 1950. Most people today would be happy with a call to worship that introduced the theme in their own language and maybe even had a twist. Sometimes I'd even sneak a joke into the call to worship. You had to be paying attention. Sometimes people would ask questions and the liturgist would respond. Sometimes the liturgist would ask a question and the congregation would respond. It meant you had to pay attention during the call to worship, not only to what you were saying, but to what was being thematically introduced. The call to worship is an important part of setting the tone for the worship. This is going to be fun. You're going to learn something, and here's what we think you're going to learn. Think about it. Make your call to worship really special and designed for your service. Second thing, announcements. This is really critical. I've gone to churches where there's 10 to 15 announcements. They just go on and on and on. They let anybody get up and make announcements. No. Announcements have to be made so that people will pay attention. 2, maximum 3. That's all you can do with announcements. Give them a slide, give them the information, tell them to look it up online or tell them that there's more information in the bulletin, but don't sit there and make announcements for 15 minutes. Don't do it. They're deadly. Keep it upbeat. Keep it energetic. Make it a fun thing that people want to come to. Announce those things. Thirdly, children's time. I always did children's time myself because I want to be able to say to the children, you are important. So important, the senior pastor is going to sit down here with you and we're going to talk about whatever you've got on your mind. I used a mystery box. Use whatever you want, but talk to the children. Don't talk to the congregation. Use language that children will understand. Have fun with the children. Children are fun. If you're not laughing with the children and having a good time with them, it's going to be boring for them. They're not going to come back. It's going to be boring for the adults that are watching. Adults like to watch the kids. Don't play to the adults. Play to the kids. Make sure that the children stay completely engaged in what you're talking about, and then send them off to Sunday school. Children's time. Moments of spontaneity, for sure, because children will be spontaneous, but make it fun. 4, a time of prayer. Now, everybody does time of prayer differently, depending on your culture, depending on the background of your church, depending on how your people do it, and have done it for ages. But I like to do a prayer where there is time for the congregation to spend time in silent prayer. So I would do a pastoral prayer. I would introduce silent prayer. And we would have a good 90 seconds, a minute and a half of silence where the congregation is expected to pray. First time you do that, people are not going to know what to do, because very often I've seen churches introduce a time of silent prayer and there's like 5 seconds because the liturgist or the preacher or whoever's at the pulpit thinks that that's a long time. They can't stand the silence. Take time. If you have to count to 90, count to 90. Let people pray. After you do it for a few weeks, people will begin to understand this is a special time. I get to spend this time talking to God. And when it's over, we're going to say the Lord's Prayer. And so then you break out of it and you ask them to pray the prayer that Jesus taught them to pray, and you all pray together. But praying is an important part of what we do in worship. And I like to pray in absolute silence. Now, sometimes you have a piano background. Sometimes you've got somebody doing a little riff on a guitar. That's fine. But people can kind of float away with their attention. They can listen to the piano. They can listen to the guitar. I'd rather they were sat there uncomfortable for a while in the silence and learned that this time is for prayer. Once you do that, the congregation gets into praying. And when you cut it short, you'll have people come up and complain to you that the service was short today on silent prayer, because they like having that 90 minutes to actually unload their burdens and be in prayer. So, time of prayer, make sure that people get a chance to pray. Next, ask for an offering. I know, you've seen churches say, if you're new to us today, or if you're a visitor, this is not for you. This is for people who are part of the church because this is going to support the church. What does that say theologically? If you're new to God, you have nothing to offer? I don't think so. It doesn't work for me. I would ask everybody every Sunday, if you have been blessed this week and you would like to return some of that blessing to God as a thank offering, please be generous. I would always say, we have been blessed, and this is our opportunity to return some of those blessings to God. Everybody, new people, old people, we all need to be making an offering. It's part of what we do as Christian people. Make an offering. Ask people to make an offering. Because God has been generous to them, be generous back to God. Ask for an offering. Sixth, preach. Preach to the people. Preach it. Stand up. Tell them what you're going to say. I have a pet peeve about preaching, and here it is. Don't read. Reading is deadly. I know some of you are terrified to preach. If you're terrified to preach, find a new vocation. But preaching where you're reading a sermon just puts people to sleep. Even if it's really, really well written, the fact that you're looking down at that script the whole time means that you're not paying attention to them. I don't memorize a sermon. I memorize my outline. I know what I'm going to say for each point. I work it out ahead of time. I spend as much time designing it as anybody who writes the script. But I don't read a script. I don't even have a script with me in the pulpit. I don't even preach in the pulpit. I get out from behind the pulpit. I stand in front of the congregation where I can look them in the eye. And that way I know if I just made a point and they didn't get it, I know instantly because I can see it on their faces. They kind of go, you get the little thing on the eyebrows and they're going like, I'm not sure I got that. You can make that point again. Make it another way. Say it in another fashion. But you get a chance to interact with people. And when you're looking at them and you're constantly scanning the congregation, looking for different faces, seeing different people smile back at you, you know when you've got them in the palm of your hand because you're watching. And they know you're watching. So there's a connection between you and the congregation. You're making a visual connection with them when you're looking them in the eye. And they understand that. And they respond because you're having a conversation directly with them. You are looking directly at them. So stand up and preach it. What I would usually do is to figure out, these are the points that I want to make. I would be familiar enough with the stories to be able to just stand up and tell them the stories. Even if it was facts, I would make sure that I had the facts firmly in my mind. And then I would break it down until I only had 3 points that I needed to make. Each point was broken down to 1 word. I don't have to memorize 3 words. Then I can go through the whole sermon. I know how to introduce it. I've got a joke. I know how to close it. I've got a place to send them. And I've got 3 points, or 2 points, or 5 points, however it makes. Once did a sermon about baseball. I had 9 points, 1 for each inning. My point is, look at them, involve them, get them to watch you, and you get to watch them, and you'll have a congregation that really appreciates the sermon that you're delivering to them. Number 7, send them out with an affirmation. I've talked about this before. There's a video about it. I'll leave a link at the end to the video about affirmations. I like asking the congregation to affirm their faith and declare who they are as a church, as a unified church. And so it always begins with, We are St. Andrew's by the Sea, or we are St. John's by the gas station, or we are First Church Lompoc. Wherever that church is, we are that church, and this is the mission that we have, and this is what we're going out to do. And these are the things that we believe. So you get the whole congregation to declare who we are as a people, as a unit. This also makes it difficult to be divisive as a unit, because we are this church. This is our mission. This is what we do, and we go forward with that mission. It brings the church together in a unifying way, and it sends them out with a unifying way. And that leads to number 8, which is send them. The benediction shouldn't just be a blessing. Send them out. I sent the people out every week. I would kind of reaffirm the sermon, the theme briefly, and then I would say, go forth and change the world. With the love of God and Jesus Christ, go forth and change the world. With this understanding that we have heard today preached to you, go forth and change the world. Your task as Christians is not just to come on Sunday morning and feel comfortable and feel blessed and hear a good sermon and give your money and go home. Or go have coffee with your friends and then go home. Your task as a Christian is to hear the word and do something about it with your daily living. Send them forth with the expectation they are going to do something about it. You'd be amazed when people hear that week after week after week. They like it. They feel like they are going forth with a purpose. And Monday morning, they have a purpose. When they go to work, when they do whatever they're going to be doing on Mondays, they have a purpose. You just gave it to them. They're thinking about it. It sticks with them. Send them forth. There you go. 8 ideas for worship. Keep changing the pace. Keep changing from formal to informal to spontaneous, back and forth. Make sure your visuals, if you have any, are relevant and keep people looking at you. Engage them, engage their brain, engage their emotions, engage their soul, and send them forth with a purpose. If you do all that, worship will be engaging, it'll be fun, it'll be lively. People will want to come back next week to see what's going to happen next week, because this week was fun. Do that. Make worship fun. You're competing with a whole lot of other things for Sunday morning time, a whole lot of things that people can give their money to, a whole lot of things that give their time to. Make sure if they give it to you for an hour, you use it well. Okay? I know you can do this. Well, that's it for this week on Coffee with Coach. If you like this message, if you want to hear more of them, please subscribe to the channel down there. You can punch that little red button. Next week, I'm going to talk about some things that drive me crazy about worship. Talk to you next week on Coffee with Coach.